The market is more now aware of this trajectory than they have been for a long time. So it's a very exciting time to be active in the rare earth element sector.
Hello to viewers tuning in to the Assay TV. I'm very pleased to be joined by Chris Grove, who is the President and Director of Commerce Resources. Commerce Resources is an exploration and development company focusing on deposits of rare metals and elements in Canada. Chris, great to be speaking with you today. Could you give us a top-level view of the company just to start off for the investors tuning in? Thanks.
Sure, thank you. Good to talk to you today, Adam. Thank you very much for your interest in Commerce Resources. As you said in your introduction, Commerce Resources has been active in the discovery, exploration, and development of rare metal and rare earth element projects. The company was created in 1999 around a set of claims in British Columbia that we own, which are host to over 30 mineralized carbonatites. On this set of claims, we have proven up one of the world's largest resources of tantalum and released positive economics on the Upper Fur deposit in 2011. In addition, our experience in carbonatites was really the best history in terms of understanding the dominant style of production of rare earth elements. And so in 2005, when China imposed their export duty on rare earth elements, we were very well poised to then explore for a rare earth element primary deposit, which we then found late in 2009, and that is the Ashram Rare Earth Element fluorspar deposit, on which we've been focusing primarily for the last decade.
Excellent. Thank you for that rundown. So you've been in the sector for quite some time and had some great successes. Perhaps you could give us a view then of how the rare earths industry is shaping up at present. It feels like this is a really interesting point for the rare earths industry right now.
I would totally agree. And I think that the table was essentially set in 2005, when China imposed that global export duty on rare earth elements, creating this two-tiered pricing system, which in 2012 was declared illegal by the WTO. But at any rate, in 2005, the Chinese basically created the opportunity for there to be a viable alternate source of rare earth elements to compete with their high export duty. And so, as I said, our experience, our history in carbonatites was a very good history in terms of understanding the dominant style of mineralization of commercial rare earth element projects in 2005. So in 2005, the world's largest rare earth element producer was, and it still is, the Bayan-Obo deposit in China, which is a carbonatite with the dominant mineral monazite. And so that seemed to be, to us, to be the ideal style of deposit to go looking for, and that is exactly what we found in the Ashram. And that simple and standard style of deposit is what has allowed us to have such success on the metallurgy and on the economics. But in terms of the macros for the market, as I said, China really set the stage in 2005 for companies to either be an alternate source of rare earth elements, mainly because the downstream customers did not want to be subject to the market manipulations exerted by the Chinese. So, 16 years ago, this process started. However, then in 2010, China upped the ante significantly by cutting off all supply to Japan in the fall, September of 2010, in what was called the Senkaku boat incident. And then prices went absolutely to the moon. The reality, though, what I really would like to focus on is that the world is going to a lower carbon emission future. That is the reality. And so if anyone, who did not understand that the world's largest IPO in November of 2019, that of Saudi Aramco, was something significant. Well, I don't know what to say, but that essentially, I would say, targeted the end of the fossil fuel era, in so much as Saudi Aramco, the world's largest company, said we need to diversify. And so really the fundamental, the trajectory, the drive towards a clean and green and renewable future, that's been underway for a very long time. It has increased significantly over the last 5 years, let's say. But I think the market is more now aware of this trajectory than they have been for a long time. So it's a very exciting time to be active in the rare earth element sector.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. The energy transition, the low carbon future, it's really accelerating now, and it's brought new attention and revived old interests into some metals and rare earth elements, of course. Perhaps we could get into those a little bit more around, the nuances of the fluorspar market in terms of how it relates to some of the infrastructure build out and the industrial processes that are really driving the demand for this element at the moment.
Right. Well, there's a couple of factors there, and certainly we all have been dealing with the pandemic for a year. And there was an economic analyst that spoke, 6-8 months ago about the stay-at-home index. And it was all of the products that were benefiting by people being more at home, like literally a new Dyson vacuum cleaner or a new leaf blower. And part of that, which is so fundamentally important, is rare earth elements being the permanent magnets inside the electric motors of basically every electric motor. Yours truly and his family, not listening to my objections, my wife bought a new leaf blower, and I was happy with the old leaf blower, but I did use the new leaf blower, in the last couple of months or so, and I was amazed because the thing almost levitated by itself. I mean, literally, the power of that leaf blower was amazing. Similarly to the Dyson vacuum cleaner, which we bought in the last 12 months, amazingly powerful. But that is the power of the rotating magnetic field, which Nikola Tesla talked about, 100 years ago. And so there's that on the rare earth element side. In terms of fluorspar, what you also have is a connection potentially to COVID, in so much as major industrial nations essentially initiating huge infrastructure programs as a economic COVID offset. And the reason that is so significant and positive for fluorspar is that metallurgical grade fluorspar, METspar, is essential for the production of aluminum and steel. And so this has led to all-time highs in terms of prices for METspar, and also all-time highs in terms of demand. So you have both rare earth elements and fluorspar at this point in time, basically with the highest demand against major issues on the supply side. And so I would be happy to talk about that if you want, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the supply side's fundamental to this story, and it would be good to get your views on how you see commerce developing in line with and meeting some of that demand supply side shortages as we move into this decade.
Right. Well, first let me outline the supply side issues. One of the things that China should be credited for and is essentially their fairly quiet internal drive to improve the environment. Anyone who has spent any time in China over the last 20 years would have arguably, or would agree with me, that the environment there has gotten worse and worse, considerably worse over the years. But, the 5-year plan between 2010 and 2015 was actually called the Green Plan. I don't know what the last 5-year plan was called, and I don't know what this one is called. But essentially, the Chinese, Beijing, was very much active and have been very active under Xi Jinping in terms of improving the environment. And certainly this is because the populace of China are very vocal about their environment. And so where the rubber meets the road on this is that the Chinese government has shut down many polluting mining projects. So something I think a lot of people don't know is that China became a net importer on balance in 2018 for rare earth elements. And sometime before that, China became a net importer of fluorspar. And China was historically the largest net exporter of both rare earth elements and fluorspar. So when I say there are issues on the supply side, first off, the world's largest producer of rare earth elements and fluorspar is now arguably a net importer of both. Now, the reality is that China is the biggest producer of rare earth elements, but more of that production stays domestic now over any other time in history. And so essentially they are buying material from Myanmar, North Korea, Vietnam, Australia, Lynas, and MP Materials in California. So in terms of Commerce Resources, there is, I would suggest, a huge opportunity. And right at this moment, there's a supply gap between demand and supply that continues to increase and will increase over time. And so ultimately, the opportunity for commerce right now is the highest it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really compelling position to be in. Okay, can we go in then to some of under the hood of the company a little bit more and talk about some of your key milestones for this year and where you're at with the pre-feasibility study, I believe?
Sure, absolutely. So we were very excited and fortunate, I would say, to have raised $5.2 million in December 2020. The bulk of that capital will go to the completion or the work on the pre-feasibility study. We are currently working on a financing as well, and we have raised another approximately $2.2 million in that financing, and that will primarily also go to the continued work on the pre-feasibility study. Excellent. I would expect that we should be able to have the pre-feasibility study released within approximately 12 months from now. Considering that over the last 9 years, we have done a huge amount of data production for the pre-feasibility itself. One of the other things that we're excited about doing this summer when the regulations allow this is to do another drilling program on the Ashram, more infill drilling, and again, for data for the pre-feasibility study. In terms of milestones for the company, I would like to look back and also mention that in December of 2020, we produced and upgraded acid-grade fluorspar sample and delivered that to a global metals trader, and they then deemed that sample was commercially marketable. That was a 98% fluorspar sample. Acid, that would be a very attractive feedstock to make hydrofluoric acid, the world's most expensive and most caustic acid. We have a significant interest from global majors in our fluorspar byproduct. And then just in March, we produced and delivered, as per a request from an industry processor, a 44% rare earth element concentrate. I would suggest that is also very commercially marketable. It had 21.2% neodymium, praseodymium, so that is very comparable to other rare earth element concentrates that are on the market at this point in time. In terms of future milestones, we are continuing to produce other samples for other majors as they have requested these samples from us. And we're very excited about the production of these and the delivery of these samples to these other companies. And some of them are noted in our presentations and other ones are under non-disclosure agreements with us. But that is very exciting. So a continued work on the project, the pre-feasibility study, the production and delivery of more samples as requested by industry majors. All of these are very exciting milestones for us.
Yeah, certainly. Very busy with some real good traction there. is there a, looking further ahead, is there a timeline sort of set around the path to construction, and looking at the phase that beyond that?
Well, we're just, a simple Canadian company who follows the most demanding mining legislation on planet Earth, the Canadian 43-101. So upon completion of the pre-feasibility study, then we can start the environmental impact assessment, which typically takes about 18 months to complete. During that same 18-month period, we would be intending to complete the bankable feasibility study. So I would give a timeline of approximately 2.5 years to be then in a position to apply for a mining permit for the Ashram Rare Earth Element fluorspar deposit. Arguably, construction or the transportation of all of the required facilities, equipment onto site, et cetera, I think would take an additional year. So, my best case scenario would be production in approximately 3.5 years. Of course, upon the receipt of a mining permit from the government of Quebec. And let me just mention that Quebec has been a shareholder of Commerce since 2017. And so I would certainly hope for a very fast track through that permitting process with Quebec.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of leads on to my next point, what you were touching on about, China's dominance previously, but also your jurisdictional advantage being in Canada. You're mining friendly, but also in terms of where the rest of the world needs to source these important elements from, Canada's making a compelling case. And, if you've got the Quebec government in support, or as a very mining friendly jurisdiction, these are all real attributes for the projects.
Absolutely. I mean, Quebec is a great jurisdiction. I'm a proud British Columbian, and we have a project. We have a huge project, set of projects in British Columbia. But, it's hard to compare with Quebec, who invest in projects, who have financed 2 major roads for, 2 mines over the last 20 odd years. The road to Glencore's Raglan, 500 miles to the north of us, the road to the Stornoway Renard project to the south of us, both financed by Quebec in the day. Certainly the government of Quebec has mentioned the possibility of financing a road in our area, which is excellent. But, ultimately Quebec really understands on which side of the bread gets buttered. And it is really a great jurisdiction with a huge amount of support. And so we're very excited about what also might be looked at by governments in Canada, and especially Quebec, in terms of downstream opportunities. If, for example, Commerce Resources goes into production, then there's all of those opportunities downstream from having a major rare earth element producer in Quebec. And I'm specifically talking about metallization, I'm talking about magnet manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. These things don't exist in Canada right now. In actual fact, they don't really exist in North America. And so the opportunity for Quebec to host, to finance a rare earth element metallization facility, a rare earth element magnet facility, et cetera, those are really interesting opportunities, I think. And with a deposit like the Ashram, which has such a huge resource, you would have the ability through the supply of feedstock for, seriously, basically hundreds of years. I mean, the current defined resource of Commerce Resources is measured, indicated, and inferred. It totals 249 million tons at just under 2%. On an extraction rate of 4,000 tons per day, that's 1.4 million tons per annum. So 249 divided by 1.4, you end up with like approximately 200 years of production. And considering that it is a carbonatite, there's no way that we have defined the totality of the deposit. So the deposit is arguably much larger than what we've defined.
There's not a lot of producers of rare earths outside of China. Lynas obviously gets a lot of attention in Malaysia with their projects. But if you consider the strategic narrative now from the US government and other non-Chinese governments to onboard and ramp up production of these rare elements and technology metals. It puts you in a quite a good position to be there in Canada and getting closer to production.
Yes, I totally agree. You know, MP Materials in California, that is in production. They've increased their production due to, you know, increased demand coming from the market. I mean, you know, they were successful in raising in a SPAC, financing $545 million in October. You know, they are doing everything right, I would say. And the Ashram deposit, I think it makes perfect sense for us to also advance into production because of this continued increased global demand, but then very specifically of the interest of everybody who's not Chinese of not being dependent upon China for any supply of resources. So yes, I agree with you.
Yep. Excellent. So just a final point then, you're listed in a few locations, sort of quite an advantage for investors around the world who'd be looking at your stock. You're on the TSXV, the Frankfurt, and US OTCs, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct. OTCQX, and we're happy to have that listing once again in the United States. We've been listed in Frankfurt, I don't know, since 2006, thereabouts. We've got some very long-standing and faithful shareholders in Germany, in Switzerland, in the UK, and we're very fortunate about that, very happy about that. And so we're certainly looking forward to being back on the road. Typically, we always go to Germany at least once a year for the Edelmetallmesse in Munich. And we certainly look forward to meeting investors again in London, Hong Kong, et cetera, et cetera. And we certainly think, to be honest, and not to be too obsequious, that the one-to-one shows are excellent opportunities in terms of meeting actual, active, and investors who also understand specifically what they're looking for, which is very important. And it may be more simplistic than is often stated, but investors who understand the specifics of the commodity and then go looking for companies active in that commodity is such a huge advantage from the company side. You know, I mean, explaining essentially the positive dynamics of supply and demand for rare earth elements to somebody that's never really looked at rare earth elements, that takes a lot of time. So the vetting of the investors that one-to-one does, I think, is an excellent opportunity for us.
Excellent, thank you. And you know, to that point, rare earths, you know, are perceptively niche in many respects. Niche metals, niche elements. But with the way that society and the world is evolving, as we've sort of discussed previously in this conversation, you know, there's greater awareness of the need for these elements. And what's more, corporates and large industrial companies and OEMs are starting to look further upstream, and we're seeing a little bit more potential for them to invest or look at more greater integration. Do you see, you know, in the conversations that you have on the investors that you meet with, you know, mining companies and rare earth companies coming closer to the end user ultimately, or the companies that are looking to secure supply chains essentially for the next decade for this big infrastructure build out?
Oh, very much so, very much so. You know, after the Senkaku boat incident, we started meeting, you know, dozens of OEMs, major manufacturers who were extremely concerned about, you know, the China's manipulation of the market, the extremely high prices. The thing is that after we released our very positive economics in 2012, prices had already started dropping off their explosive highs, which they hit their apogee in March of 2011. So we released our economics in May of 2012. The prices had already been falling for a year thereabouts. They still were for all intents and purposes, very high as judged by these industrial majors we were meeting, but they kept on falling. You know, they really fell until January of 2017, and then the rare earth element prices started appreciating. And so there was a period of about 5 years there where it was still a lot of companies were reaching out to us, but arguably they didn't have the impetus to secure a partnership deal with a project because the prices continued to fall. Today is completely different. The price service that we subscribe to out of Beijing only updates is only a rare earth element report. And I do like the fact that they just solely focus on rare earth elements. And it is typically, the service is called BAIINFO, BAIINFO. And it typically is a weekly report, but about 3 months ago, they went to daily price reports because the prices were so dynamic and were rising basically every day. Now, having said that, the prices have fallen off of their most recent highs a little bit, but still in general, they're at least 30% higher today than they were as we used them in 2012. And so this also then speaks to what is reality for us, which are more global majors reaching out to us for both of our products, rare earth elements and fluorspar.
Yeah, indeed. Excellent. Well, that's covered it very deep analysis in a relatively short period of time of where we're at, and it's really been good chatting with you, Chris, to get insight on Commerce Resources. So I hope it goes really well with the various sampling and key milestones you've got coming up, and hopefully we can catch up later in this year for an update.
That sounds great. I really appreciate it, Adam. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
My pleasure.